Hi everybody, welcome to Night Scene 300. I'm Aaron Bong. I play Daphne DeVille, your host on Night Scene. Tonight, we're celebrating television history. This is our 300th episode. For over 6 years now, we've been bringing you positive, funny, intelligent, and sometimes definitely outrageous images of gay and lesbian people in their own words. As far as we know, this is the longest running television show by, for, and about gay and lesbian people in history. So tonight, we're going to show you some of the people that you've seen on the program and others that work behind the scenes to make Night Scene the show it is today.
Okay.
Jay, what do you think of Lenny's wardrobe?
Early Goodwill describes it very well. I think it's his own stuff, though. He brought all that stuff from home.
Night Scene was conceived in 1989 by David Evans and Lanny Swerdlow. David died in 1993 from complications due to AIDS. If you tune in regularly, you'll notice that the ending credits for the show dedicate Night Scene to his memory. We talked with producer Lanny Swerdlow about the birth of Night Scene and why it was important for him and David to create the show.
A little tiny bit looser on 3.
Gay and lesbians are not on TV. And that's where it's at nowadays. If you want to communicate with people, you have to communicate on television. That's it. People just don't read very much anymore, especially young people. It's sad but true. So you've got to communicate on TV. And back when we first started Night Scene, there was nothing on in Portland that had anything to do with gays and lesbians. Every now and then there might be one program on cable access about it, but there was no series. And we thought a weekly presence was very important. And also exposing, you know, not just a few people in the gay community, but a broad mass of the gay community, a lot of different people, week in and week out. And so that's why I thought the program was very important. We had to get out there and we had to be on TV, because if you want to talk to people, if you want to communicate to them about the gay community, you have to do it on television.
It's illegal. It's illegal to do that. Why?
Lanny Swerdlow was the host of the early Night Scene shows. Joining him as the first co-host was a controversial drag queen named Rosie Waters. Robert Hill played Rosie on Night Scene and remained involved with the show even after leaving as co-host in 1992. I'm sad to say that Robert Hill died in November of 1996 and we all miss him greatly. Robert brought an earthy outrageousness to the show and really made the opening dialogue of the early Night Scene come alive.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Lanny Swerdlow.
Oh, I love your fur.
Ralph.
Ralph?
Yes. Ralph. I saw people come and go, oh my God, how disgusting is the fur. Well, I'll tell you what. This is a dead animal, to be true.
Is, yes.
Lots of things have died on the road, and we've run over them with our cars, haven't we? So this is not a fresh roadkill from I-5, ladies and gentlemen. This is a genuine fox, full length. It was given to me by a gentleman in Vancouver, BC. He bought it off this woman's back while I was sitting in a hotel and brought it over to me. Him and his lover went over and bought it off this woman, brought it over to me and said, it looked better on you than on her.
Well,
and I thought that was very nice. And so I've had Ralph for about 5 years. I only bring him out every now and then. He smells.
He certainly
so
does.
yeah. And I figured this is a smelly show, so why the fuck not?
Yeah, what the hell, smelly show. I actually thought you got it in trade for some activities elsewhere. That's really
Lanny, I don't, no, Lanny, I only take cash in that business.
Yes. Okay, cash in that business. Cohen spoke of his own homosexual
Singer Shan Leslie was the guest performer on the very first Night Scene and later replaced Rosie Waters as co-host. Prior commitments prevented her from joining us for the taping of the show. However, she told us that she's with us in spirit and she asked us to mention how proud she is to have been a part of Night Scene.
Blaming someone else for your own personal problems.
Right.
And that's it for psychology for today.
101.
And I did this because I wanted to get into psychology because I got this great psychologist joke.
Oh, well, I can't wait
All
to
right,
hear it.
how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb?
How many does it take, Lenny?
It takes one. But the light bulb really has to want to change.
Change.
Hey, okay.
Following Shan's departure from the show in 1992, David wanted to move the show in a more mainstream direction. So he lobbied to bring in Dr. Marianne Humphrey. Dr. Marianne had been a guest on the show right after the release of her best-selling book, My Country, My Right to Serve. She agreed to be the new co-host with Lanny, and things really started heating up then. Night Scene was being seen up and down the West Coast and even in the South. We talked with Dr. Marianne about her involvement with the show.
as it started out, the history, as the original question you asked was about history, and my understanding was it was only shown in Portland, basically, and Vancouver when I started the show, when I started with Lanny. And I proceeded to expand the horizons of the show. Also, when I started, there was a great article that was in the Oregonian, a picture of Lanny and David standing in front of the NightScene logo, and it was a great article. It was the first article they'd ever had. So we proceeded to enlarge our visibility. And I said, you know, here's this show that has tremendous possibility of doing something for the gay and lesbian community and bridging the straight community and saying, here's who we are, here's what we do, these are the kind of people we are, we're wonderful, we're strange, we're different, we're all sorts of people, and we do all sorts of things with our lives, with our entertainment, whatever it is. And so I have a book that is filled with articles that appeared in The Advocate, in Deneuve magazine, in The Twist up in Seattle, Dallas, Texas, you name it. I have this thick of information, of media coverage that we had in the 2 years that I was the other host on the show. And before that, there was nothing. So I proceeded to make a bigger picture out of NightScene. By the time I left the show, we were airing in Dallas, Texas, we were airing in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, in Seattle, in Salem, in Medford, in Portland, in Vancouver, and we're working on some other places. Then I left the show. So I kept those programs going to those various cities in the country, which before that had not happened, because basically Lanny had lots of things to do and he wasn't wanting to be bothered with that. Well, I can understand that. That's not a negative on his part. But I said, fine, I will do it. And I got sponsors in those areas, and we proceeded to enlarge NightScene to the country and get media coverage as well. So then people started coming to our show that were talent portions because they knew that we were being aired in these other places, and they wanted that kind of visibility. So the talent started to change. And during the first year, I started taking the talent, taking the guests, and arranging them for the show. And so Lanny sort of turned it over to me, and the talent changed from strictly lip-syncing to real talent, people who sang, played instruments, who did poetry, who did dances that were actually professional dances, all sorts of things that hadn't appeared there before.
Gregory Franklyn was a repeat guest performer on NightScene in its first few seasons, and in 1992 joined the crew as a camera operator. With a few interruptions here and there, he's been with the show ever since. He's now our beloved assistant director and post-production supervisor for NightScene. When David Evans died, the future of NightScene looked pretty grim. Gregory talks about how NightScene survived the loss of its most valuable player.
Oh, this was probably in 1993, right after David died. We still had a couple of months' worth of shows that were in the can that we could run after he died. So we were out of production for a couple of months, and I think there was a month there also where we ran some reruns. By that time we had over 100 shows, so we could just pick out some good ones and put them on the air. But after a couple of months, Lanny realized that he was going to have to either produce some new shows or drop NightScene altogether. So I think for a while there it was kind of touch and go as to whether NightScene was going to ever be on the air again. And I got a call from Lanny. He had called around to all the people who had crewed on the show and wanted to know who was interested in keeping the show going. And I was one of the people that showed up. Actually, there were only 3 of us from the crew that were available who did not actually work at the City nightclub at the time. There was myself, there was John Park, and there was Michael McIntyre. And we all came together at this meeting, and Lanny was explaining to us what his situation was. He knew that he couldn't carry on with it himself. He just couldn't carry the whole show by himself. So he wanted to know if we were committed to the program and really wanted to see it to continue. And myself, I was definitely into it. I wanted to see it happen. And when I came to the meeting, I found out that Michael and John Park were also very much into it. So we decided that we were going to commit ourselves to seeing that NightScene would still be on the air again. And at that meeting, Lanny asked us, he said, well, who's going to direct the show? And all 3 of us raised our hand at once, immediately. So we had to kind of flip a coin to see who was going to direct the show And what we decided among us is that we would all three direct at different times. You know, one shoot would be done by one person and so on and so forth. Anyway, on the first taping that we did, John Park had won the flip of the coin, so he was going to be the first director of the first 5 night scenes without David. And he just really rose to the occasion. I mean, he was amazing. And I think by the end of the evening, all of us realized that that's probably where he belongs. So he continued to direct the show. I did the audio, and Michael did graphics and titles. John was, he was a lot of fun to work with. He's a great guy.
First of all, it was just to be a part of something exciting. I ran camera for about 3.5 years, I guess. And then David Evans passed away, bless his heart. We all loved him a lot. And I just kind of grew into the role of directing the show. And I wanted to more or less carry on the tradition, the standards that David had set for the show, and continue to perfect it more and more and more, which is very difficult to do. Lots and lots of work. One of the ideas that we had from the very beginning was to make it totally outrageous and totally wacko. But this was also at a time when we were fighting Measure 9. We were up against the OCA, and a lot of people in the gay community felt it was really important to put our best foot forward and look as respectable as possible so that we could get as many people on our side as possible. And then there are other people who thought, no, let's be outrageous. If they can't take it, who cares? So there are positives and negatives to that. Somehow I think we managed to keep it balanced out where we had a bit of both.
After Dr. Marianne's departure as co-host in 1994, producer Lanny Swerdlow decided Night Scene needed a whole new direction. He retooled the show completely, transforming it into what he called a queer American bandstand.
When Marianne left the show, I could have gone and looked for a new co-host, but I decided this was kind of maybe the time for me to reconfigure the show back to the original premise I had. I mean, there's other shows now on television, on cable access, that are about gays and lesbians. So I didn't feel that that the function that I had to do was, you know, give news and information about what's going on in the gay community. I can get back into what I originally wanted to do, which was a queer American bandstand. And so at that time, since we now had editing equipment, which we didn't have at the beginning, we could edit the show. And so that's how I got going back, how the new format came into being. It's a queer American bandstand with gay people coming together, partying, dancing, having a good time, showing all the fun that goes on in the gay community. I mean, you know, people don't know what goes on in the clubs unless they actually go down to a club. So, but they hear about it. Everybody's heard about gay clubs and stuff. They're supposed to be the best. So here they can see it on television, what's going on. They see them down there having a great time. They see them having a lot of fun. And at the same time, they also introduce them to the hottest new music because that's what the club plays. And this program is geared, unlike the original Night Scene, which is geared to all ages. Frankly, this show is geared mainly to people under 25.
Alex Broderson, at the tender age of 15, became the main DJ at the City nightclub in 1983. At that time, he was known as DJ Enterprise. He was selected as the first person to handle the audio duties for the show. He continues to be responsible for most of what you hear on Night Scene today. When Lanny retooled the show, DJ Enterprise was a natural choice as the new host. He now appears in Night Scene's credits as DJ Dog. We talked with him about his contribution to the show.
Back in 1989, when Lanny and David Evans decided to do this show, I started out just being a little person in the video control room with David Evans, and I controlled the audio. And that's when Lanny Swerdlow and Rosie Waters were the hosts. And I think I actually did a number one time for them on Night Scene to help them out and whatnot. And from then, it evolved when he had a second co-host, and he had a third co-host after Rosie. And about that time, I decided I didn't like Night Scene. I didn't want to be a part of it. I thought Night Scene should be more of a dance show. And Lanny can profess that he came up with the idea, but for many years, several people told him that he should do it that way, and eventually he caught on to the idea, and he did. So we started doing Night Scene, the dance show, which basically all the music is put together by me. All the videos are chosen by me. Since I'm the head DJ here at the City Nightclub, it only seems fitting that I would do that. So that's how it evolved. And now we're at the point now where we're showing some good videos, getting good exposure for the club. I consider Night Scene a half-hour infomercial for Lanny on cable access in his club, which is nothing wrong with that, because I don't see anybody else doing that. And since Portland doesn't have a big market for dance music to be exposed on radio, on television, or anything like that, this is by far the most important reason that I think Night Scene is a good thing, because it does expose dance music, which is just as strong as your rock music, just as strong as your pop music, and country and whatnot, just as popular. For the first year of Night Scene, the dance show, I was the host. I was the one that introduced the songs, I introduced the videos. It was me. And I sort of liked the way it was going. It worked out for a while, it was good, and then it started going a little downhill as far as I'm concerned, and then I decided that I needed to pull myself back and try to create something a little bit more exciting, and having a drag queen, which is our co-host currently, Daphne DeVille, and a co-host, for a few weeks with her, that has changed a lot. And Daphne and I introduced the Spotlight Artist, and I really enjoy doing that now. And I still program the shows with all the music you hear, all the videos you see. So I still have my input just as much. I'm just not on the camera all the time. So I enjoy that part.
He received a great number of awards.
Due to other commitments, director John Park left the show around the same time as Dr. Marianne Humphrey. So Lanny chose a fresh young broadcasting student by the name of Stan Ashford to head the new Night Scene crew. Stan helped to bring a whole new look to the show, borrowing from the fast-paced feel of MTV.
During my time as post-production supervisor, it was really unique to be able to have the opportunity to change the way that the show looked a little bit. And since it was a weekly show, it was definitely a struggle to make sure that every Thursday there was a tape down to PCA. It was cool because we got to use a lot of different techniques and stuff that weren't being used. I got to do a lot of research on what was being used by like the networks, and tried to copy them with the minimal equipment that is actually here. It actually is a very, very good show, considering the amount of technical stuff that goes into it. Compared to a regular television broadcasting studio, Night Scene doesn't even come close to the technical capability, but the artistic involvement of the people and Gregory and when I was doing it myself is just, it makes up for the lack of the technical equipment. I would like to see Night Scene become a regular syndicated television show. There is nothing like it. Lanny calls it the Queer American Bandstand. I think that's kind of a generic thing. I don't think it is a Queer American Bandstand. I think it's giving identity to gay youth, where we're so inundated with the straight community's version of what they think life is, that it's just nice to see once in a while a gay-identified show that makes people feel good about themselves. Night Scene should definitely try to syndicate itself. Probably very difficult with the fact that you're going up against straight producers and stuff like that. But given time and given Night Scene's stamina, I think eventually it will get itself on the major airwaves. Yeah.
I had been away from Night Scene for a while. I had taken a job, and the job required me to be on the job during the time that Night Scene was being taped. So Stan Ashford was the director of Night Scene at the time. He was doing that. And I got a call from Lanny a few days after I had left the job that was keeping me away from Night Scene. Within days, I got a call from Lanny. And he says, I'm in a jam. Stan has to leave, and you know, he's already gone, and I need somebody to step in and take over. And I was very excited because when he described the job to me, he was describing to me that it requires you to do some directing and some technical directing and some editing. Well, those happened to be the very things that I had been working on for the year that I wasn't with Night Scene. So, I mean, it was tailor-made for me. So I came down to the club and went into the control room and looked at some of the work that Stan had done, and I was absolutely mortified, you know? I mean, here was this show, and it was moving. It was, and he had done a great job. I mean, he's a fountain of creativity. He's got some great ideas. And I looked at his shows, and I was going, oh, I'm never going to be able to keep up with this. So anyway, I went to Lanny, and I told him, I can't do this. And he says, Gregory, just do the job the way you would do it, you know? And once he got me off the hook about that, I went back and I looked at him again, and I said, yeah, I can do that. I can do this. And I did, and I just really appreciate the opportunity to have the free hand to do what I wanted. And my shows are different than Stan's. I mean, we follow pretty much the same format, but the difference is that mine isn't quite so fast-moving, not quite so frenetic. I mean, he's really great about that. He's a gonzo kamikaze editor, man. But I think I slowed things down a little bit and gave it a little bit more continuity, and that's something that I'm really proud of. And before we get out of here, though, I did want to say one thing. The people who come together, volunteer their time to make NightScene, are some of the greatest people out there, and I've had a wonderful time being with them. And we have gelled into a real team now. And I don't know, there are times when we're taping NightScene when we are really in the zone.
In 1995, DJ Enterprise decided that he wanted to concentrate his energies more on the musical aspects of the show, so he left his co-host. We wanted to keep the format pretty much the same, with the possible exception of maybe giving it more of a live feel. So my character, Daphne DeVille, was brought in, and we moved the hosts onto the dance floor.
Everybody, welcome to NightScene. Let's get it up. All right. I just want to thank Daphne for letting me co-host with her this last 4 weeks. I've really appreciated it, and I hope you've had a good time. We're really having a good time together. I'm going to go back to my trailer park. Hopefully some of you can pitch in for the cab. So thank you, Daphne. Thank you very much, and thank you, people.
Well, thank you, Ms. Love DeVille. That's my cousin, Ms. Love DeVille. Lady, I was gonna walk Love DeVille home. Come here. I bet we got a little secret. We're actually men. Did you know that? It's this chameleon thing we do. Girl, that's just the way it is by Chameleon.
Girl, that's just the way it is
By Chameleon.
I became a part of NightScene in February 95. No, February 96. February 96, don't want to make it 2 years. I had been working on a character in, I tend to look at my drag as not necessarily me in a dress, but trying to create specific characters. And I tend to follow the characters with different wigs. I have 2 other characters that I've been working on, and I just need to start performing them. And the one character that Lanny had seen that he really liked was Daphne DeVille, kind of a little sassy blonde, who isn't intelligent all the time, or at least won't let it on that she's terribly intelligent, but she'll get in a few cracks, and she'll let you know that way. So he had seen that character and had asked me to be a part of it, asked me if I wanted to host it, and told me to come down to auditions, and so I did, and I ended up being the only one here, except for this girl who was here named Shannon, and we did a few things together, and I guess it didn't work out with Shannon, but it seemed to work out with me. And I want to go back a little bit, because one of the other things that I hate about NightScene is that nobody recognizes me. Which is, you know, it's mostly okay, and it makes me feel good because I hear people talking about it, and I hear people discussing it, and they talk about Daphne DeVille. They don't talk about me. And that says something to me as a performer, it says that I'm doing my job and creating another character that is totally outside of myself. And for that reason, I think it's very exciting. Over our 6 years of bringing you information about issues and people of concern to the gay and lesbian community, we've hosted a veritable who's who in the Pacific Northwest and the nation. Among them were former Portland Police Chief Tom Potter, Portland Mayor Vera Katz, news anchorman Eric Schmidt, author Dr. Marianne Humphrey, U.S. Army Sergeant Perry Watkins, Rose Court Empresses Darcel 15 and Lady Elaine Peacock, filmmaker Gus Van Sant, photographer Paul Dahlquist, gay mayor Sanford Director, Secretary of State Phil Kiesling, GLAAD spokesperson and former Lesbian Community Project Director Donna Redwing, City Commissioner Mike Lindberg, former National Gay and Lesbian Task Force Director Urvashi Vad, former Secretary of State Mary Wendy Roberts, Bohemia After Dark producer Jeff Crawford, poet Walt Curtis, disco diva Candy J, author Linnea Du. Well, you get the idea. Almost anyone who was important to the gay and lesbian community over the last 6 years has made an appearance on this stage. We've enjoyed bringing you their lives and their stories right here on Night Scene.
I'd like to thank everyone who's been watching Night Scene, whether this is your first show or you've been watching for the 6 years that it's been on the air. It's been great fun. It's been lots of fun. I have learned so much and I have met so many people. And one of the most rewarding things has been the thousands of people over the years who I've talked to who says their first exposure to the gay community was through Night Scene. Or it was their only connection to the gay community, and that's how they felt connection to the community until they finally had the intestinal fortitude or whatever to actually get out into the gay community and start actually meeting people. So it's been very, very rewarding, and that's why I've done it, and that's why I'm going to continue doing Night Scene, because it's fun. After all, Gore Vidal said, there are two things in life you should never miss. One is having sex, and the other is being on TV.
Well, that about wraps it up for our 300th installment of Night Scene. We'd like you to stay tuned for the credits so you can know about some of the people who volunteered their time and their energies making Night Scene what it is today. So from all of us to all of you, thanks for watching. I'm Aaron Bong for Night Scene 300. Good night.